Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We're so excited to have our next guest joining us today to talk more about the work she's doing. And Allie is going to break it down for us today. A little bit about perfectionism, something most men and women, unfortunately, live in a society like this, but men and yes, both women as well. Deal with this, and she's going to help us break this down to help us enable, empower ourselves to, well, let's get rid of that age and that day and age and just start living. So welcome back to the show today. Allie Reining joining us here live on the podcast and on the Zoomcast. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
You
You're
first.
known as the parent coach for the professional badass. Yep. And she's the CEO. It's Allie Ryan Coaching. So tell us first and foremost a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I work with people that are busy professionals who are working to balance all things work and family. We all know how much we have during the day. We often come home, we either have stuff going on with our kids, with our families. It
Yep.
doesn't matter whether your kids are younger or smaller, what age your parents are. Family stuff comes up, and that is where I come in, where I help really with these communication dynamics. How do we want to show up? How do we create more balance for ourselves, more harmony in our lives? All things related to relationship is what I specialize in.
Yay. And by the way, you're based out of Colorado, correct? But you're working
Yes,
with
I'm in
people
Denver.
all over?
What's that?
You work with people all over, right?
I
You do.
do. Yes, absolutely. Yep. That's the beauty of technology and Zoom these days is that I have clients that are in California that travel overseas and still keep their appointments. It's wonderful to, again, tech is just an amazing resource for us.
It is. I know we talked a lot about burnout, stress, overwhelm, anxiety, all that you could do to help people
Mhm.
overcome. Today, we're going to talk about perfectionism and some strategies to help release that. But before we do that, let me ask you about this free hypnosis masterclass. What's this all about?
I'm so excited. So one thing that I don't talk about it often because I think, it can freak people out a little bit because we have this idea of what hypnosis might be, but it is one of the best and most effective techniques to help us get deeper into our subconscious and actually hear the wisdom that we so often have that we don't hear because our conscious brain is often in charge. So I am leading a free masterclass this Friday, April 5th from 12 to 1. Mountain Standard Time. Anyone is welcome to come and show up. All you have to do is register at www.allieryancoaching.com/hypnosis-workshop, and you'll get the registration link. I will lead you through a guided hypnosis. I will teach you how to self-induce. It's quite easy. And we will work on creating some inner soothing and calm because who doesn't want some of that right now? I think we could all use a little bit of that.
100% agree. I'm down for that. All right. Well, let's get to something a lot of us deal with, perfectionism. What is that even? Could you share?
Yeah, well, first I want to share what we think perfectionism is.
Okay.
What we think it is a badge of honor. We think it's performing at a high level, and we think it's a desirable character trait that will lead us to success. And several years ago, when I first heard this term, I remember being like, yep, that's me. And I wanted I wanted everything to be perfect because I have high standards. I was like, yeah, that sounds
Hmm.
pretty great. And I think that applies to so many of us here today, where we think it is a badge of honor to be a perfectionist, performing at a high level or desirable character trait that leads to success. But I am here to bust this myth because in reality, what perfectionism actually is a, and I'm just using this definition from the Oxford Dictionary, but it is a personal standard or
Okay.
attitude that demands perfection and rejects anything short of that. So it's basically this all or nothing type of thinking. It's not just wanting to do well.
Hmm.
It's not excellence. That's different. Perfectionism is actually, I set this standard for myself. And if I cannot reach that, then I think very terrible of myself. And so it's also the need to appear perfect. And I think, what's so interesting is that who defines perfection, right? It's very subjective. For example, I could say that sunsets in Colorado are perfection,
Yeah.
whereas you could say the sunsets in, off the New York coast where, maybe where it goes down by the water is absolute perfection. And so I think, it's
In the
very
eye of
important.
the beholder. How do we say that?
Exactly, exactly. Right. And so for us, because we're the eye of our own standards, where we often get stuck in this mentality where we think it's got to be up here or it's not good or it's terrible, really sets us up for feeling terrible most of the time.
Yep.
Excuse me. So perfectionism is not the same as striving to be your best self. And again, it is not the same as striving for excellence. Perfectionism actually holds you back by creating unhealthy behavior in your pursuit to look a certain way and maintain that persona. And when we give ourselves the standard, it creates an unattainable ideal that we can never meet, because there's always going to be something else that can make what we do or who we are better. And when we never measure up, we feel terrible.
So true. We do. Ah, all right. Why are we feeling like this? Where does this all come from that makes us this way? I think we've all been there.
Yeah, well, oftentimes perfectionism, I love this quote that I read from the wonderful author Elizabeth Gilbert. What she says is perfectionism is just fear in fancy shoes and a mink coat, pretending to be elegant when it's actually just terrified. So
Ooh,
perfectionism is actually boils down to avoiding painful emotions. We
okay.
want to show up in a particular way to shield ourselves from feeling emotions like shame, judgment, inadequacy. So we pretend to be someone or something that we're not. And when perfectionism is ruling our lives, we're so worried that our best isn't good enough. However, we don't often give ourselves an opportunity to even find out. And the more that we hide our true selves from ourselves and others, the more we start to find out that we're going to get found out. And we start to have thoughts like, if they really knew me, they wouldn't like me. If they see how much I don't know, I'll be fired. And we think that we've pulled the wool over everyone's eyes. It's like you have this secret, which then actually leads to some imposter syndrome. And I'm sure we can all deal with that, where it's like, again, that secret of like, I'm not good enough. No one can know that I actually, don't deserve this job or this position that I have.
It's so true. Ah, all right. Well, we got to figure out how we can release this too now.
Exactly.
Please.
Exactly. So, real quick, the negative impact of perfectionism is just so much more than just beating up on yourself. A lot of times, people that are struggling with perfectionism, they don't often do much at all because they have this standard of it needs to be way up here. And if it's not, then I won't try at all. So, oftentimes, what it leads to is decreased productivity, not reaching our goals, and a strained relationship with ourself. So what's so interesting and ironic is that perfectionism has the opposite effect of what we intended. So it's because of that all or nothing thinking that really we get so caught up in thinking that if we can't be perfect, we're waiting for the perfect
Hmm.
inspiration or the perfect mood to hit. We end up not doing it at all. We put projects off past their due date because we're so worried about it being perfect, which actually, because we procrastinate so much, it actually creates us doing subpar work. And so yes, here to bust all of those myths and talk about how we can release some of that. So let me just get to my other little slide here. I love how
Sure, sure,
prepared I
sure.
came today.
It's awesome. No, no, no. You could share the slides as well as if you want on our screen. I don't know if it's for broadcast or just your notes.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe next time I'll do that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I actually have an ebook that I have on perfectionism that I was gonna share, but I didn't get all the links set up in time. But that is a great idea, like you said, of being able to share that. But anyway, so releasing perfectionism. I have some ideas around that. The first one is recognizing, kind of like I touched on, that
Hmm.
perfectionism is an illusion, right? It's so subjective and we all have a different idea of what it looks like. So I think that's the first thing, is just recognizing like my idea of perfection might be very different than someone else's.
Yep.
So, again, just we're going to release all of that. um, and so the next thing that comes to mind is self-compassion. And parents, especially, we set such high standards for ourselves and for others that when we start to feel When we fall short of these standards, we're quick to criticize ourselves, judge our worth, and spiral into this cycle of self-doubt and self-criticism. So self-compassion offers this alternative approach, one that is rooted in kindness, understanding, and self-acceptance. And really where self-compassion starts is just allowing ourselves to become aware of that inner dialogue and noticing when our thoughts turn critical or judgmental, and then challenging these negative thoughts by offering words of kindness or encouragement, like, yeah, I hear that you really wanted to do well on that, or I hear that you think you're not enough. Like, I understand that that feels so painful. That in of itself is self-compassion, of just giving ourselves a little bit of that kindness that we can often give others, but we don't often give ourselves.
Yep.
Next, embrace imperfection, which is really challenging for a lot of us who have high standards. But again, high standards and wanting excellence is very different than perfection. Like I said, perfection is sort of this really high standard that we can never reach. And so when we embrace imperfection, what we're doing is we're sort of just allowing the truth to be that mistakes and flaws are an inherent part of the human experience. Instead of striving for flawless perfection, we can embrace the beauty of imperfection and celebrate that some, even art, right? Some of the most beautiful art and some of the most famous art we've seen is full of mess and imperfection. And that's actually what makes life so rich and meaningful.
All right. But it's easier said than done. How do we let it go, right?
Well, it comes back to what I said at first, right? Perfectionism is often we're trying to shield ourselves from painful emotions. We're trying to shield ourselves and protect ourselves from shame, from judgment, from that not good enough type of thinking. And so it's that practice, and this is what I help so many people do, is letting them and holding space for people to be uncomfortable, to feel some of these feelings in a really safe environment. Because oftentimes you're right, we don't know how to feel those. We don't know how to experience them. And I know the first time that I actually let myself process and feel shame, I think I thought I was going to die. Like, it is such an uncomfortable experience, but that's the thing. That's all that it is just an experience that it actually flows through us really quickly if we let it. So you're right. It's not easy. What I'm saying is, like, that might sound simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. It's a practice. It's a skill. And it's deciding that we're ready to be a little bit nicer to ourselves, because it's always striving for this unattainable ideal. It's actually deciding, that you're done beating up on yourself and other people for not reaching this, this idea or this fantasy of what we have. It's more embracing who we actually are. And when we can do that, like, there's such a beautiful world that we can open up to that we don't even know. I mean, it really is like very liberating, actually.
Yeah. Oh. And what did you say? You mentioned something about self-care in your notes. I just lost them on my screen. I'm sorry. Was that next?
Oh, that's okay. Yes, that's the last one. So the next one is to let it go, right? Just practicing.
There it is. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, all good. No, so yeah, so the next step that I like to talk about is letting it go. And that is, again, we have this fantasy because it's often this idea of who we think we should be, or this idea of who people want us to be. And so it's sort of just opening up to the idea that, like, maybe we don't have to be going for that fantasy version of ourselves, or even looking at the fantasy version of our kids or our partners, because if we have this unattainable ideal with ourselves, we often have it with other people too. Guilty, very guilty here. That's something I've had to really work on. And just let it be like, I actually want to get to know the me as I am. And I actually want to get to know other people in my life as they really are, not the idea or the picture perfect version of them, but actually know them. And that kind of makes me think of the conversation we had last week around connection and friendships, where it's like, we actually need to, in order to get closer to people or even with ourselves, open up to, like, well, who is the real Jill? Who is the real Allie? It's underneath this facade that we present to people.
It's true.
So letting go, embracing the beauty of imperfection as this natural and essential part of the human experience, and recognizing that through our imperfections, we actually find connection and empathy and understanding.
I love that. Connection, energy. Would you say empathy and understanding?
Yes, yes. Through our imperfections, we can find connection, empathy, and understanding.
Let's also remind everyone how we can contact you and find you at this time.
Find me on Instagram. My handle is @Allie Ryan Coaching. Allie_Ryan_coaching. You can also reach out to me through my website. I have a little contact button, and I've got my free masterclass this Friday. So who doesn't like something free where you're going to learn how to get some inner soothing and calm? Because that's actually something we really need. And it's not outside of us, it's actually inside of us. And I can teach you a really easy way to do that. So please come, please register. Spaces are limited, so sign up today.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Let's continue the conversation. We still have over 10 minutes left, and we want to also point out, last time we spoke, my goodness, that was, well, there's always been so many conversations. I get confused. You offer that connection call. That's what it's called.
Yes,
Right?
yes, yeah. It's
And
funny
that's a
how
free
connection is
30-minute connection call, discovery call. I always forget. Everyone says it
Yeah.
a little bit differently, but you can
Oh,
go right
that's
to the
okay.
website and book it there. And we're really here to learn and unlearn perfectionism. I'm excited about this because everyone deserves a chance, and to sometimes you got to redesign the whole life,
You
and
gotta
it's not
revamp. Yeah. You
revamp,
gotta
redesign.
Yep, yep. You got to just, take the whole thing and just kind of pull it apart and rebuild it. And, I want to also really, validate for people. A lot of times the thought of coaching or even self-improvement can be really scary. And that makes a lot of sense. When we know what to expect, even though we might be unhappy, our
Mm-hmm.
brains love that, right? We know we love predictability. And so the idea of self-improvement
Guilty.
can be really scary because we don't
Mm-hmm.
actually know who we are on the other side of deciding to maybe release some of these behaviors that aren't working for us. But I promise you, I got you. I hold people's hand through this process. I'm a very high touch, high compassion, high understanding coach, but also like keep you on track for the things that you're trying to do. And so just want to touch on that point of like the thought of sometimes redesigning our life can sound a little terrifying. Some people are ready. They're like, jump in, I'm ready for this. And other people are a little more tentative, and I completely understand. It took me actually a few years to once from the time I heard of coaching to actually hire my first coach. I followed her for a long time. And so follow me on Instagram, get to know me, sign up for my emails. It's you're going to get advice and great perspectives whether you decide to buy anything or not. I'm not someone that, of course, I'm going to try to sell you on coaching, but that's not really my job. Is more to just offer you perspective shifts, offer reframes, offer help for the things that are happening in your life that is so common for us, right? That overwhelm, that burnout, this perfectionism that we think is this badge of honor that's actually totally stressing us out. All of those things is the stuff that I naturally talk about. Also boundaries. These are things that are very common in my little neck of the woods.
But even like look at like society with perfectionism. I mean, it started eons ago with advertisements and ads, and then it's great to know the companies, a lot of them change, and they're using, plus size models now, not just skinny models. And or if you go to CVS, there's some of the, like the dye and makeup now. It's not retouched photos, but then you have social media at your fingertips every day, and you feel
Yes.
like you
Yes.
have this expected, what's the word? Not
Yeah, no,
expected.
again,
It's
this
making you feel
unattainable.
like this is what I should look like or how I should look, because everyone's posting these
Yes.
glamorous photos, filters or without filters, but it's like it gets daunting and confusing. And it's like, well, should I look like that? It's just so much pressure. I wonder a society without this stuff. And I'm just scared for my own children at this point with social media and how that's giving them the wrong image, the body image. It's just, I just worried.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And I think, what I like to say to that is like, we don't have to sit and just be worried. We get to actually take some action, right? A lot
Hmm.
of these are conversations that we need to be having with our kids and we need to be having with our friends of like, you know what? I don't want to have to show up in this certain
Yeah.
way. And I think it's really important when we think about social media is like we are only, even with what we post, I know this for me, I I know that I'm only showing a picture, a little tiny slice of my life. And so I like to keep that in mind when I get on there. And I've been really intentional about my use lately of just like, it can be so easy to just tune out or to numb out with my feelings and get on there. That's when I know I'm scrolling a lot on social
Yeah.
media. And just remembering like we are seeing again just a little slice of someone's life. We don't actually know what's happening for them. Just like so few people actually know what's happening for us, right? Like we have our close friends, but a lot of people don't actually know what's happening deeper underneath there. And remembering that like other people are often going to be going through things or experiencing things that we don't know, and keeping that in mind of just like we're all humans and we're all feeling that, like you said, that compare and despair. that need to be active on social media, or else we feel like we're going to be missing out. I think that common human experience is so much more prevalent than we realize. That's sometimes, like, what I like to remember is like that's sometimes the purpose of sometimes social media is like
Yeah.
the it keeps us disconnected. Maybe we
Mhm.
log off for a few minutes and go actually talk with people. What a
Right? I
concept.
know. I exactly. Oh, my
Especially
goodness.
post-pandemic, it's like allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable. I think we were so
Yeah.
isolated and everything did become very technology driven, and it's like allowing it to be like, yeah, I might be a little uncomfortable going and talking to someone or joining a new group. But I promise you, most people are also feeling that exact same way. Again, we have so much more in common with other
It's
people than we
amazing.
think. We often think
Hmm.
we are the only one that feels that way, but that's shame talking. That is usually the voice of shame that keeps us isolated and quiet. And that's another thing that a lot of my clients and I work on is that shame that can be so pervasive and tell us that we're the only ones that must feel this way. No,
No.
no, we all feel that.
Ah, good. Thank goodness. But let me also ask, we still have 6 minutes left in the show, so hold on. I lost your notes again because it looks like it's twirling. But was there anything else to our page for today? Where'd it go?
Yeah, so redefining
Sorry, sorry.
self-care.
There we are.
Um,
Thank you.
Technology, right?
Yes, no, I have a trouble. It keeps pop swirling here. So there we go. I had to pull it back up. Go
No
ahead.
worries. Yeah, so in our fast-paced and demanding world, self-care often does take a backseat to other responsibilities and obligations. And neglecting our own needs leads to burnout, exhaustion, diminished mental and physical health. How can we take care of other people? How can we be the person we want to be if we are neglecting ourselves? Our taking care of ourselves is the number one thing. And I know as a parent, that can sound, when people say that, they often worry that that sounds selfish. No, it is not selfish to take care of yourself. We actually really need to put ourselves back in that first place, or even back on the top 5 list. Prioritizing ourself and our self-care is essential for replenishing our energy, reducing stress, and enhancing our quality of life. And so I like to, instead of just be like, yeah, self-care, bubble baths. No, 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 no. I like to call it like it's a redefining. It's redefining it again, moving away from the selfish indulgence to recognizing it as an essential act of self-preservation and self-love. And it encompasses a wide range of activities. For me, going outside, taking a nice walk in the nice,
Hmm.
natures, getting the sun in my eyes, that's some of my favorite thing. So for other people, it might be laying down and taking a nap. For other people, it might actually be like taking care of their bills. It might sound funny, but like sometimes what actually makes us feel better and allow us to rest, it can be a whole range of things. And so I like to be really flexible with this and let people just find the self-care that works for them and let that be whatever it is, of just however we can be intentional about honoring our needs and our boundaries. That is self-care.
Yeah, and it's not selfish. Being selfish, sometimes confused, or others might judge you and think it is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's different to everyone, self-care. It's something that's going
Yeah.
to make you feel good for yourself. Not everybody would, recommend that for themselves, but that's my issue with my sister and I. We have the whole self-care. Self-care to me is getting my nails done, and I haven't had my nails done now in 3 months, so I don't have much time, but it's not like I do it all the time. And when I do, I
Yo, when
feel
are you
so
going to make an
good.
appointment? When are you going to go get your nails done, girl?
I saw my sister yesterday for Easter and she's like, "Oh, you haven't got your nails done." I'm like, "No, I haven't had time." I said, "But when I do, I cannot wait." And she like rolls her eyes. I'm like, "Ew." I'm like, "Just because you don't get your nails done and I want to," but you worry about those people in your life that judge you. And yeah, most of the time they're family members. I will. In 2 weeks, I'm going.
Good, because it's important. And like you said, it means a lot to you, which means I want, as someone who cares for you, it's like I want you to do that for yourself because it makes us feel so good when we take a little bit of time for ourselves.
It does. And there's nothing wrong with that. My goodness.
Exactly, exactly. So, we know we have a little bit of time left. So, what I like to talk to people about too is like we get inviting people to shift their story, right? Shift their story around again, the levels that they're setting the perfection levels that they're setting themselves up for. And just first, it starts with this awareness. Start by noticing how it shows up in your everyday life. Is it specifically with work? Is it specifically with the way that you want
Yeah.
your house to look? Is it the way that you want to be perceived by the way you dress and the way that we do our hair? certain people, again, this is very subjective, so we're all not going to be perfectionists about the same thing. But from that place of awareness of noticing where it shows up, then we can have some curiosity. And from a place of love and kindness, we can get curious about why we're doing this and where it came from. And I really love to ask people, why do they expect themselves to be perfect? Like, what does it mean to be perfect? And what does it mean if they're not perfect? And oftentimes, like when they start actually with some curiosity and some love and, a little love sprinkled on there, we can start to sort of unravel and pick apart this story for seeing it what it truly is, which is, again, just trying to shield from, feeling vulnerable, feeling exposed. And from that place, we can often set a little bit more of a realistic standard for ourselves. The good news is that the way you feel is always a result of the story you tell yourself. When you believe your story up until now could be that you're a perfectionist. And I'm sure in many ways that story helped people get to where you are today. I always love to validate that of like, it did work. It does work for a period of time until we realize how tired and burned out we are. We can thank our brain for creating this persona and also realize that it's okay to let it go. When you believe that you're truly valuable and worthy just the way you are, you no longer need the perfectionist persona. This also opens up to exploring that we kind of live in a flawed system, like you mentioned, with social media and all these other things of seeing how we're supposed to be. It's more the system that might be kind of wrong, not us, right? It's the system that makes us think that we need to rely on perfectionism in the first place. We can see that it's the system that's flawed and not you. We can start to rewrite your story. And that's where I come in, helping you rewrite that story.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right. Well, how do we reach out to you? And one more time, tell us about the free masterclass this Friday.
Yes, this Friday, April 5th, 12 to 1 Mountain Standard Time. Please sign up. It's going to be so much fun, and you're going to come away with just this idea that, like, yeah, we can feel soothing and we can feel calm, even amidst life's chaoses. Because I tell you what, I don't live in a perfect little bubble where I think everything is calm and bubblegum. Nope. I have 3 kids that I'm dealing with stress and family, just like everyone else, and I still know how important this work is. You can find me on Instagram at Allie_Ryan_coaching. And my website, AllieRyanCoaching.com. And to sign up for my class, AllieRyanCoaching.com/hypnosis-workshop.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you here, and looking forward to the next time we connect.
Thank you.
Thanks
so
again.
much.
Let's let go of it. Perfectionism. Be who we are.
Let
Look,
it go.
it's like, yeah.
Let it go. Open up to what's there. Yes.
Thank you, Allie. Have a fantastic day. Looking forward
Thanks.
to next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.